Hello, in this video you're going to learn how you can simplify your state management in Flutter using the provider package. You're going to learn how to use it, the caveats, and the best practices. So let's get right into it. First of all, I want to show you the widget tree with the most important widgets. So we have the main app, which is the root app. It basically holds all the other widgets inside the widget tree. We then have the login form inside the main app, and it basically holds just a form where the user can type something. We also have a login display where something will be displayed. And the login form, as you can see, has a username field and a password field, which are just two text widgets basically. Now let me show you how it looks like in code. Here you can see the main app widget. As I told you, it is the root widget. It has a column inside of it which just holds a login form and a login display widget. The login display widget just returns a text widget inside its build method. The login form widget is a column which holds a username field and a password field. The username field is a text field and the password field is also just a text field. How I want this app to behave is actually pretty simple. When the user types something inside the username field, I also want to display this username inside my login display widget. So which problem do we face here? The username field, as you can see, is at the very bottom in our widget tree. And somehow we need to get this information, right? The username that the user typed to the login display. The way you could approach this problem is by using a method called lifting the state up, which basically is a beautiful word for callback hell. The main widget, the root widget, passes a callback function to the login form. The login form passes this callback function to the username field. The username field then, whenever the user types something, calls this callback function. The main app then stores the typed value in its state and passes the state value down to the login display widget, right? Basically callback hell. Instead of passing callback functions, the username field will actually directly write into a state, which is sort of like a global state that everyone can access. And widgets which are interested in this state can then rebuild itself when the state changes. So let me show you how we can now use provider to do this. First of all, make sure you installed provider. Go into your popsec.yaml and add the provider package. So the first thing we're going to do is create a provider. Provider is basically what I showed you, the state, the object that holds the information that other widgets share with each other, right? So create a providers folder. Inside there, I will create a login provider.dart file, class login provider. And the provider now holds the informations that we want to store, right? So this will be a username, which is a string, and a password, which is also a string. I will define the get username method and the get password method like so. And then I will define two setter methods, right? So I will define the set username, string username. Inside there, I will set underscore username to username, and then the set password method, which takes the password and assigns it to our private password field. So how we want this to behave is that whenever the state changes, so whenever a value inside the provider changes, we sort of want to notify every widget which is interested in this provider. And the way we do this in Flutter is by extending the change notifier class, which gives us access to a method called notify listeners. Inside main, instead of running the main app directly, I will actually run a change notify provider. Here we need to define the create property, which takes a function, which gets a context, and then needs to return a provider. In this case, we will just return our login provider, and the child will be the main app. Now Flutter knows about the provider. Inside your app, you will probably have multiple providers, so I will show you how to use multiple. Right here, instead of returning a change notify provider, we will actually use the multi-provider widget, which takes a list of providers. Inside the providers list, we can then just put the change notify provider like we did before. I will move the child to the multi-provider like so. You could now have multiple providers inside this list. Now I'm ready to use the provider. I will go into the username field. I will import provider. And what it does is it will add 3 methods to my context. It will add the context.read method, the context.watch method, and the context.select method. With the read method, I'm able to change the provider without reacting to changes. The watch method allows a widget to react to changes of this provider, and the select method allows a widget to react to specific changes, which means just a single variable changing, not all of them. So the username field actually is not interested in watching the state, but it is interested in changing the state. So I will call context.read, and then here I will put login provider. And now I have access to the fields that I actually defined inside the provider, right? So username and password. And I will set the username to the username inside the unchanged of the text field. Note that I can use this way of changing the variables because I'm using the get and set keywords inside my getters and setters. You could also just define normal functions inside the provider. For example, you could define the set username as follows: void set username, string username, and then just assign the username and call notify listeners. And now inside the username field, we can actually just call set username and pass the username. This is equivalent. I just like the other way a bit more. I will do the same inside the password field. So I will define the onChange right here and call context.read. As you can see, read is not available by default, but to do so, I need to actually import the provider package, right? And I will set the password right here like we did before. Now comes the most interesting part. I will go into the login display widget, and then I will import provider and then call context.watch, and I'm interested in the username. And watch basically means that this widget is now subscribing to changes of this login provider. And whenever it changes, it will re-render itself. We can pass in the username, and to verify everything works, and you can see that the login display just displays the username. But we have a slight problem here. The password field is also changing the login provider. This means that whenever I type something inside the password field, login display will re-render itself, which is kind of unnecessary because the login display is not really interested in the password. It is just interested in the username. To visualize what I'm talking about, I've put a debug print inside every widget that we care about. And you can see it starts off by calling main-app.build, and then main-app calls login-form.build, login-form then calls username field.build and password field.build, and then login display.build is called. So what we expect now is that whenever we type something inside the username field, that login display build will be printed into the terminal, right? And this is exactly the case, as you can see. Now comes the but. Whenever we type something inside the password field, login display.build is also called. Instead of using context.watch, we should actually use context.select in this case. To use the select method, we need to specify the type of value that we're interested in as a second argument inside the angle brackets. We are interested in the username only, and the username is a string. So we need to put a string, and inside the parentheses, I'm going to specify a function, which then takes a login provider and will return the value I'm interested in, which is p.username. If I save and try it again, changing the usernames field still works, but when I change the password field, login.build is not printed in the terminal. So this is all you need to know to use provider effectively. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to help you. If you liked it, stay tuned. I will release more videos regarding Flutter. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.